Most people believe power at work begins the day someone hands them a title, the promotion, the direct reports, the pay band that finally makes the late nights feel justified, the signature authority, the new line on the org chart. Until that moment, they assume they are powerless. They assume they are waiting. They assume their job is to perform until someone with real power decides they have earned a piece of it. That belief keeps a lot of people stuck for a long time. Inside almost every workplace, some of the most powerful people are not managers. They are the person everyone checks with before touching a broken process, the person whose judgment determines whether a project is realistic or fantasy, the person who remembers exactly what leadership promised 6 months ago and what conditions were attached to it, the person other employees trust before they trust the official announcement, the person managers consult before making a move they cannot reverse, the person who knows how the work actually gets done, separate from how the work is described in slides. These people have power, real power, the kind that shapes outcomes, protects deadlines, prevents disasters, and stabilizes teams. The problem is that most of them built that power accidentally. The company benefits from it constantly. They remain underpaid, overloaded, exposed, and easy to replace on paper. This is about how to build that power on purpose when nobody has officially handed you authority. The first move is to stop being someone who only understands the task in front of them. Most workers understand their assignment. Powerful workers understand the system around the assignment. They know who depends on the work, who delays it, who approves it, who blocks it, who gets blamed when it fails, and who collects credit when it succeeds. They know which deadlines are real and which deadlines are political theater designed to create urgency. They know which meetings move decisions and which meetings exist only to perform alignment. They know which metrics leadership actually watches and which ones get reported but never read. They know which problems keep returning every quarter because nobody wants to own the fix. A task doer says, "I submitted the report." A systems operator says, "I submitted the report, but finance usually holds approvals for 3 days, legal only reviews on Thursdays, and the client meeting is Monday morning, so this needs to be escalated today or it will miss the cycle." The second person has power because the second person understands reality. Companies often reward people who look busy. They depend on people who understand how things actually work. Those are not the same population. The second piece is calm competence under pressure. In chaotic workplaces, and most workplaces are at least partially chaotic, people remember who panics, who disappears, who overpromises in the moment and underdelivers later, who blames others to protect themselves, and who stays useful when the situation gets messy. Calm competence means you do not make chaos worse. You communicate clearly. You separate facts from fear. You understand what can actually be done now. You do not inflate certainty to look impressive. You stay useful without becoming the team's emotional dumping ground. This is not about being a workplace superhero. It is not about absorbing every dysfunction the system creates. It is not about becoming everyone's emergency contact. The powerful version sounds like this. Here is what is happening. Here are the risks I can see right now. Here are the options, and here's what I can realistically take on without breaking something else. There is a hard catch attached to this skill. Many workplaces reward the person who can handle pressure by giving them more pressure. Calm competence without boundaries becomes unpaid emotional labor. You build the skill, then you protect it. Otherwise, it becomes the reason you cannot leave at 5. Many strong employees believe their work will speak for itself. That is one of the most expensive lies in modern corporate life. Work does not speak for itself. People speak for it. Managers summarize it. Coworkers reinterpret it. Metrics flatten it into numbers that lose all context. Meetings forget it within a week. Someone else may attach their name to it before anyone notices. 6 months later, when promotion conversations happen, the person who controlled the narrative wins, not the person who did the work. Controlled visibility is not bragging. It is making sure the right people know what you contributed, what problem you solved, what obstacle you handled, what risk you prevented, what result your work created, and what conditions you delivered under. Compare 2 updates on the same task. The first one says, "Finished the client file." The second one says, "Client file is complete and sent. I corrected the missing pricing data, flagged the approval delay before it became a problem, and added the updated compliance notes so the team can move forward without another revision cycle. That is not bragging. That is preventing erasure. If you do not narrate your contribution, the workplace will convert your labor into someone else's leadership story. The fourth move is becoming the keeper of receipts. This is not a paranoid practice. It is memory protection. Workplaces forget conveniently. Who agreed to what the original deadline was, who changed the scope and when, who approved the shortcut that later became a problem, who gave the instruction, who warned them, who did the extra work, who carried the mess when it broke. When things go wrong, memory becomes political. The version of events that survives is usually the version that protects the person with the most power in the room, unless someone else has documentation. You build a written record without making it dramatic. Confirm decisions in email, recap meetings in writing, note dates of requests, track approvals, capture changes to scope, save feedback, both praise and complaints. Make a habit of brief follow-up messages that begin with phrases like, "Just confirming from our conversation, I will prioritize the client deck today, move the internal report to Friday, and wait for finance's numbers before sending the final version." Receipts give your reality a timestamp. People without power are constantly told to be flexible. Flexibility without documentation is a trap. The company can change the conditions, then evaluate you as if the original conditions never existed. You did extra. They remember a missed deadline. You absorbed a scope expansion. They remember slow delivery. Documentation is the only thing that keeps the original story alive. A non-manager with relationships across the organization is harder to isolate. This is not networking in the LinkedIn sense. It is not collecting contacts. It is not pretending to like everyone. It is building a web of functional trust with people in other functions who can give you context, warnings, support, information, and credibility. There is a meaningful difference between vertical dependence and lateral power. Vertical dependence means your influence flows through one boss. If that boss leaves, gets demoted, dislikes you, or starts protecting someone else, your reputation collapses with theirs. Lateral power means people across the organization know your work, your judgment, your reliability, and your credibility. Finance trusts your numbers. Legal knows you send clean information. Operations knows you understand real constraints, not idealized ones. A senior employee in another group knows you follow through. A project lead knows you do not create unnecessary chaos. When something goes wrong, those people speak up for you in rooms you are not in. If your boss is the only person in the company who knows your value, your reputation is trapped inside one person's interpretation of you. That is not power. That is custody. The sixth piece is learning the language of business outcomes. Most employees describe their work in terms of effort. Management thinks in terms of outcomes. The employee says, "I worked really hard on this." The organization hears, "So what changed?" Real power requires translating your labor into business impact without losing your humanity in the process. The vocabulary is concrete: time saved, errors reduced, revenue protected, customer issues prevented, risk lowered, cost avoided, speed improved, quality improved, compliance maintained, team capacity increased. Compare framings. A weak version says, "I helped with onboarding." A power-building version says, "I created a repeatable onboarding checklist that reduced repeated questions and helped new hires reach independence faster." A weak version says, "I fixed some spreadsheet issues." A power-building version says, "I corrected reporting errors that could have affected the monthly numbers before they reached leadership review." Same work, different language, different career trajectory. If you cannot explain the business impact of your labor, someone else will reduce it to attitude, effort, or personality. They will say you are a hard worker. They will say you are a team player. None of those phrases protect your salary, your role, or your trajectory. Outcome language does. Power requires translation because the people deciding your future are not in the room watching you work. The seventh move is among the most expensive mistakes non-managers make. They become powerful because they fix things no one else can fix. Then they lose that power because they never name what they are doing. They become the unofficial trainer, the unofficial project manager, the unofficial mediator, the unofficial quality control, the unofficial emergency responder, the unofficial process designer, the unofficial emotional shock absorber for a dysfunctional team. The company depends on every one of those roles. Every one of them is real labor. None of them appear on the job description, the performance review, or the compensation conversation. Unnamed work becomes free work. If you are training new hires, call it training. If you are coordinating deadlines across people, call it coordination. If you are catching errors before they reach leadership, call it quality control. If you are managing handoffs between departments, call it workflow management. If you are calming angry clients, call it client recovery. If you are creating templates that the team now uses, call it process improvement. Do not let them call it helping when it is actually unpaid management. Companies love employees who absorb broken systems without naming the labor. The moment you name the work, it becomes harder to pretend it is not real. It enters the record. It enters the review. It enters the negotiation. That is exactly why some managers will resist the language. The language is the leverage. The eighth move is building expertise that other people cannot easily fake. This can be technical knowledge, process knowledge, client knowledge, policy knowledge, historical knowledge of how things got built, tool knowledge, industry knowledge, or hard-earned problem-solving knowledge. Expertise alone is not power, though. The shape matters. If you hoard knowledge, people resent you and route around you. If you give knowledge away without credit, people exploit you and forget where it came from. The goal is to be a generous expert with boundaries. There is a meaningful difference between being the only person who knows something and being the person who built the system that other people rely on. The first is fragile. The first traps you. The first can be used against you in performance reviews where you are described as a bottleneck instead of an asset. The second is durable. The second is visible. The second carries your name. Instead of being the only person who understands the report, create a guide, lead a walkthrough, document the process, make sure your name is attached to the improvement. If your expertise only creates more dependency on you, you may become too valuable to promote and too necessary to protect. That sounds like power. It is not. Real power comes when expertise expands your options instead of expanding your workload. Most advice tells you to set boundaries. Almost no advice explains how power affects which boundaries actually work. A powerless boundary sounds like, I just cannot. A strategic boundary sounds like, I can take this on, but that means the report moves to Friday. Which one should be prioritized? When you do not have authority, your boundaries need to force trade-offs into the open. They need to make the workload conversation a management decision instead of a personal complaint. Use capacity language. Instead of saying, I am overwhelmed, say, I currently have 3 deadline-sensitive items. I can prioritize this new request, but I will need direction on what should move. Instead of saying, that is not my job, say, I can support this once my current deliverables are complete, or we can discuss what needs to be deprioritized. Instead of saying, I do not have time, say, I can deliver this by Thursday. To deliver it today, something else would need to be reassigned. Notice what changes. The decision returns to the person who has authority over priorities. You are not refusing, you are surfacing the math. Many workplaces survive by training employees to treat capacity as a personal weakness instead of an operational limit. Strategic boundaries reverse that framing. They turn workload back into what it actually is, which is a management decision about resources and priorities. Becoming politically aware without becoming fake is harder than it sounds, but the alternative is worse. Saying I do not do office politics sounds noble. It is also a good way to lose battles you did not realize you were already in. The workplace runs on politics, whether you participate or not. Decisions are political, promotions are political, visibility is political. Who gets believed when there is a conflict is political. Who gets forgiven for the same mistake is political. Who gets labeled difficult is political. Who gets protected when leadership changes is political. Who gets blamed when something fails is political. The goal is not to become fake. The goal is to become politically literate. Political literacy means knowing who actually influences decisions, who controls information, who gets protected, who gets blamed by default, what topics are sensitive in your organization, which leaders care about which outcomes, which coworkers carry informal power even without titles, and which conflicts are not worth entering. A politically unaware employee publicly challenges a flawed process and embarrasses the person who designed it. A politically aware employee raises the same concern with evidence, frames it around risk reduction, and avoids turning truth into a personal attack. Being right is not the same as being effective. Workplaces can punish truth when it threatens status too directly. Power is knowing how to make truth harder to dismiss. That requires reading the room before you walk into it. Workload is what you were assigned. A track record is the pattern of results you can point to. Many employees carry massive workloads but have no clear track record because everything disappears into the machine the moment they finish it. Build a personal wins document. Keep it private. Update it monthly. For each entry, capture what happened, what you specifically did, why it mattered, who benefited, and any measurable result you can attach to it. Track projects completed, problems solved, metrics improved, processes you created or rebuilt, people you trained, risks you prevented, clients you retained, systems you cleaned up, deadlines you rescued, responsibilities that expanded under you without a title change. A sample entry might read like this: built a new intake tracker after repeated request delays between sales and operations, reduced follow-up confusion, created a single source of truth for pending requests, used by both teams within 2 weeks. 2 sentences: specific, concrete, owned. If you do not maintain your own track record, your career becomes dependent on your manager's memory, and your manager's memory may be lazy, biased, overwhelmed, or convenient. They may genuinely forget what you did last quarter. They may remember it inaccurately. They may attribute it to someone else. None of that is hostile. Most of it is just human. Documentation protects you from human memory, including good people having bad memory at the wrong moment. Be careful with the myth of being indispensable. Indispensability sounds like power. It often becomes a cage. Trapped indispensability looks like this. Only you know how the broken process works. Everyone depends on you for it. Nothing is documented. You are interrupted constantly. You cannot take time off without guilt. You cannot leave the role without breaking the team. They might not promote you because they need you exactly where you are. They might overload you because you are the only one who can absorb it. They might deny rest because everything fails when you step away. Your reliability becomes infrastructure, and infrastructure does not get raises. Infrastructure gets maintenance. Strategic value is different. You improved the process, you documented the system, you trained others. Your leadership is visible. Your skills transfer cleanly to another company. You can explain your value in interviews using language an outsider would understand. The goal is not to be irreplaceable. The goal is to be high value and mobile. Being needed is not the same as being valued. A workplace can need you desperately and still underpay, overlook, and exhaust you. Being needed gives the company a reason to hold you in place. Being valued with options gives you a reason to stay or leave on your own terms. Real power means your value gives you choices, not just chains. Internal power has a ceiling if you have no external options. A worker without external leverage is easier to pressure because the company knows leaving would be painful for you. They do not have to say it out loud. The dynamic works on its own. External leverage means you are not fully dependent on one employer's approval to feel safe. It comes from an updated resume, a strong portfolio, a real professional network outside your company, current certifications, freelance income if your situation allows. industry relationships, savings that buy you time, side skills, recent interview practice, and public proof of competence that exists outside your company's internal systems. This does not mean you are planning to quit tomorrow. It means you are not waiting until you are burned out, humiliated, targeted, retaliated against, or trapped before you start building options. Options change posture. You negotiate differently. You tolerate less disrespect. You recover faster from a bad performance review. You stop begging for recognition from people who benefit from withholding it. The most dangerous time to build leverage is after you already need it. A great deal of workplace mistreatment depends on employee dependency. The less optional your job feels, the more power the company has over your nervous system. People stop sleeping. They take meetings sick. They accept terms they would never have accepted with a single competing offer in their inbox. Build the offers before you need them. The final piece is the most overlooked. Power is not just accumulation. Power is timing. Some employees build real influence and waste it on every minor frustration. They argue every comment in every meeting. They die on every hill. By the time something serious happens, their credibility is already spent on small fights nobody remembers. Others build influence and never use it. They go entire careers absorbing things they had the standing to push back against because they never developed the judgment to deploy what they had built. Real power means knowing when to speak, when to wait, when to document silently, when to escalate, when to step back, when to negotiate, when to let someone expose themselves without your help, and when to leave. The goal is not to become combative. The goal is to become harder to mishandle. Not every battle deserves your capital. Your credibility is capital. Your relationships are capital. Your documentation is capital. Your expertise is capital. Your emotional energy is capital. Spend strategically. Do not burn through influence arguing about every annoying comment in a status meeting. Save it for workload boundaries, credit theft, role expansion without compensation, distorted performance reviews, retaliation, unsafe practices, and decisions that materially affect your career trajectory. Power without judgment becomes noise. Judgment without power becomes frustration. The point is to build both and to use them only on things that matter. So put all of it together. Understand the system, not just the task. Build calm competence and protect it from being mined. Control your visibility before someone else controls your story. Keep receipts. Build relationships across the organization. Speak in outcomes, not effort. Name the work you are actually doing. Develop expertise that travels with you. Set boundaries that surface trade-offs into management decisions. Read the politics before you walk into them. Track your record. Stay valuable without getting trapped in it. Build external leverage before you need it. Use power on purpose, not on impulse. None of this is about becoming management's favorite. None of it is about chasing a title. None of it is about manipulation, dishonesty, sabotage, or revenge. None of it requires you to become someone you would not respect. The point is to stop being useful without being protected, to stop being visible only when something breaks, to stop letting other people control the story of your labor, to stop waiting for a title before behaving as if your work has weight. When you are not management, you cannot command outcomes. You can shape perception, you can protect your record, you can expand your options, you can control your visibility, you can become harder to dismiss, harder to overload without consequence, harder to mistreat without cost. You do not need a title to have power, but you do need proof.